First, I'd like to start by acknowledging that much of the work of the University of Waterloo takes place on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. Our main campus is situated on the Haldeman Tract, the land granted to the Six Nations that includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. Our active work toward reconciliation takes place across our campuses through research, learning, teaching, and community building, and is centralized within our Indigenous Initiatives Office. If you are looking for more information, I can help you in locating that. But I'm excited to welcome everyone to our last of our Faculty of Health Alumni Office Hours events for the term. This is a new series of events we started this term, and I'm excited for what we're planning for next term. So stay tuned for more information on that. But today we are featuring a tourism and park management alumna, Jessica Vandermey. Bringing alumni back to connect with our students is an important priority for both the Faculty of Health and the broader university. Alumni help show our students what's possible, the success they've had, and the stories they share can help shine a light on the path for our students who might be wondering what their own futures will look like. So we hope that you will learn lots from Jessica tonight, and please ask all of the questions that you have. Any question can be on the table. But as I mentioned, we are planning our next series for winter term. So I do encourage you, if there are careers or people you'd love to see or connect with, please feel free to share any ideas you have in the chat right now, or think about it and put them in the chat later. But I'd love to know from students what careers you'd like to hear from or learn more about. These sessions are more valuable when the students when you give your input on what you'd like to see. So I'd love to hear any feedback you have. And my last note is just about turning cameras on and chatting to make the most out of this session, but we've already done that piece. So I encourage you to keep your cameras on while we chat with Jessica, and use the hand raise to raise your hand and ask any questions when you have them. Or if you want, use the chat, that's there too. But yeah, I think it's more fun for everybody when we get to be a little bit more face-to-face, even though we're through a screen. So yeah, I encourage everyone to participate that way. And now I'm just going to read Jessica's bio because it's really cool. And then we'll pass it over to her. So Jessica Vandermey graduated from the Tourism and Parks Management program at Waterloo in 2014. Upon graduating, she worked in both community municipal recreation and sports event management. Despite enjoying these roles, she always knew she wanted to return to working in travel. Following a multi-month journey through Southeast Asia, Jessica returned to Canada, keen to find work in travel again. Jessica came across Kensington Tours, a luxury tour operator that specialized in fully customized private guided adventures all over the world. She worked as a destination expert specializing in Asia and the South Pacific for 3.5 years. In the last 1.5 years, she stepped into the role of Director of Sales for the Asia Pacific team at Kensington Tours and manages a team of fabulous destination experts who have extensive destination knowledge of a range of countries. Many Kensington Tours employees have lived in and/or traveled to these countries extensively, giving them the destination knowledge that their clients require to curate their dream journey. All sounds so awesome, as I'm sure many people are starting to think about travel and tourism again. But now I will pass things over to Jessica to let her fill you in more about her career journey, and we can ask all of our questions to her. So Jessica, thank you so much for being here with us, and I will let you take it away and tell us how things developed since your time at Waterloo.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you. It's so nice to see everyone. This is more videos on than I get on my meetings most of the time. So I'm like, my team has something to learn. This is great to see. I encourage anyone to interrupt me at any point if you have a question about something I've shared. We'll go on a bit of a a story, a journey post-grad. But again, if you have any questions in the meantime, please let me know. Like Jen said, I graduated from the Tourism and Parks Management program in 2014. As I'm sure many are experiencing now, I had a lot of thoughts about what I wanted to do post-grad, but it's confusing. When you actually come to the point of graduation, you're kind of at a loss, and you have to go on to the wonderful world of Indeed or whatever else you decide to search on. And yeah, so I had gone through recreation and leisure studies courses. I had done a few sports management practicums and things like that. And so I'm going to probably touch on this later again, but I loved football, specifically NFL football. And so I had an opportunity to come across my plate to work for the Canadian Football League. And I thought, of course, I would love to do that. I love football. Of course, that would be awesome. It kind of had this prestige about it, working downtown Toronto for the CFL. And so that was in event management. And I really did not like it. I'm the first to say, I think you should try everything. If it comes across your path and you feel any sort of interest or intrigue about it, give it a go, because this is what happened to me. I tried something that I thought for certain. I remember telling people about it when I was graduating, and especially as some of my close guy friends who, they played football in university, they said, oh my gosh, that's the dream job. And it just wasn't the dream job for me. And so I did do that for a few months. I learned a few things about event management at kind of a grand scale. And then from there, I actually left that position. I worked in hotels. So I helped open actually the Delta Waterloo. So if you're located in Waterloo, on Herb Street that there is a Delta property there. So I helped open that. So that was, again, just a short stint. And from there, I actually worked with the city of Cambridge as a recreation program kind of director for Hespler. So if you don't know this, the city of Cambridge is broken up into neighborhood associations for which they are very proud of. Each neighborhood has a lot of neighborhood pride. And so I oversaw Hespler and some of their community programming. That was a great opportunity. Again, I was able to put into practice a lot of the things I learned from my time at UW. I had done, like I said, a mix of sports and tourism and parks and recreation courses. And so that was a really good opportunity for me to get a sense of, I feel like I did a little bit of everything: programming, budgeting, scheduling, working with different sort of tenure of staff and things like that. And like it said in my bio, I certainly enjoyed those roles and I learned a lot out of them, but I knew that I was going to want to take a stint, an extended travel season. And so I had planned to go to Southeast Asia. And so I planned this multi-month journey where I went to Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, Laos, and Indonesia. And so it was amazing. I highly recommend it if you haven't been to that part of the world. It's fabulous. It's just, there's so much interesting culture and varying landscapes from country to country. And so that instilled, I really loved travel. And again, I can get into that at a later point where that came from. But it just instilled in me that I knew that I majored in tourism and parks management for a reason. I always knew I wanted to work in travel, and traveling, again, at that level, I was just like, this is what I need to do. This is what I want to be doing. And so I came back to Ontario and I started the job hunt again. And I came across two different job opportunities. And one of them was working for WestJet at the airport, kind of in a customer service type of role. And then one was Kensington Tours. And when I came across Kensington Tours, I remember looking at their website and reading they have a manifesto and they would talk about what they design for clients. And I remember reading the job description and thinking, I haven't worked in sales before per se. I've had, kind of run-ins with sales, but I didn't have sales experience. I certainly didn't have travel agency experience, but it sounded like this dream job I had to apply. And so I wrote this cover letter and explained my background, explained that I'd just come off of this multi-month journey, that I'd lived in Australia before, and that I felt like I would really be a good fit for the role based on my passions and just even my university experience. And lo and behold, I got the job. It's interesting. I remember being in the interview and one of the questions was, the interviewer said, my wife and I are planning to go to Vietnam. We have 4 weeks. plan our trip, tell us what to do. And I was like, this is what I did when I was traveling. I'd run into people who were, maybe coming from Laos, going into Vietnam, and they would say, oh, I have a few weeks, what should I do? And so it just came so naturally. And I was like, as if people do this for work. And I became that person that was like, my fiance will tell you the first time we met, he's like, you were like a Kensington Tours spokesperson, because I was like, this is the best job in the world, to get to talk to people about these places I love. And it just didn't feel like work. It felt like I could just speak about my experiences. And so I did that. I did destination expert work for a few years. So I think 3.5 years was what Jen shared. So what that looked like was I would specialize in a very limited number of countries, which is what made us destination experts. We didn't do the whole world. So a traditional travel agent really does mostly reservation services. You go into a brick and mortar travel agency, you sit down and say, I want to book a cruise, and they go on their GDS and they book a cruise. Whereas for us, it was more so they would call in and say, I want to go to Australia. It's a bucket list destination. I have 2 weeks. What do you recommend I do? And I got to work with people and design these dream trips based on their preferences, based on, aspects of trips they liked from previous journeys. And then I got to kind of oversee that process from booking to the point that they return from their trip. So what we offer is really kind of a one-stop shop. So you work with that destination expert for the duration of your time. And then depending on what you want to do next, they might come back to you, or they might go to a different destination expert for a different region. And I love that job. I miss many aspects of it. I miss talking to clients and being able to speak about my favorite properties and my favorite experiences. But I knew that I always wanted to grow within the company. And so right really in the middle of COVID, an opportunity came across my plate to become a director of sales for the Asia Pacific team. And it was a difficult one. Like I said, I love that job. I love the independence. I love the ability to manage my own book of business. But I really, really like the people and I work with, and it was a new challenge to be able to start coaching other destination experts to, do what I was able to do and find success in what I was able to find success in. And so it's been a journey. If you've ever managed people before, whether it be in, co-ops or part-time jobs or something like that, there's certainly highs and lows, but it's mostly been highs. I really respect the people I work with. Like Jen said, people come from a tremendous amount of knowledge and background. Many of my staff have lived in or are from the countries that they sell, or have just traveled extensively. And so their passion is incredible, and their knowledge is really above and beyond. And that's what makes the Kensington experience. So that's a quick snapshot, kind of quick, of kind of my post-grad journey.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
You did say something though about travel and where that came from, didn't you?
Yeah.
Have you come back to that? Should we come back?
Absolutely. I will say up until I would say about grade 11, I wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to go into journalism. I wanted to be a reporter. That is what I wanted to do. And I was sold on going to Carleton University, the best journalism program in Ontario. And then I went, I'll say my dad used to work at American Express in incentive travel. And what that means is he would work with large corporations where when top salespeople or top performers would get like an incentive, like a trip somewhere or an experience somewhere or something like that. And so he would sell these packages to corporations to then incentivize their sales staff. And so in doing so, he needed to, of course, visit these properties, which allowed us as children to go to these properties that, we never would have been able to otherwise. And so we were traveling from a very young age. My mom's actually from Holland. And so I also went to Holland when I was very young. And so travel was just kind of in my day-to-day life very, very early. I knew that I loved it. And it was something that my parents instilled in me. And so on one of these trips, we were on a Disney cruise of all things when I was 16. And I remember watching this amazing cruise director come on stage, and she was coordinating all these events, and she was having all this fun and running all these programs and kind of being like the head honcho that was guest facing. And I was like, that's a job. Like, someone gets to do this amazing work and they get paid for that. And it was just like a switch flipped where I was like, forget journalism. I want to do that. I want to go into tourism. And so came across UW and their program. And at the time, Ron, who was, quite high up, he was obviously very affiliated with Disney as well. And so I was like, oh my gosh, this is the dream. There's this Disney opportunity, there's tourism. And so it was just kind of set in stone. It was going to be the way it was going to go. And so that's where the travel idea came from, was I wanted to be a cruise director, I wanted to do that. And then, I figured out very quickly, it doesn't have to be a cruise director. There's a lot of other opportunities that you can do that are pretty neat. So that's where that love came from.
Cool. Thanks so much for sharing all that.
Yeah.
So nice. I love hearing more about like people's backgrounds and how they got where they are. And, it can just be one random moment in your life that,
oh yes, it can,
path or sets you up for it. So
absolutely. Thanks. Absolutely.
So I'll just let everyone know that we can open up for questions, and we can pull every piece of information we want to know out of Jessica for the next 40 minutes. So think about your questions, but if anyone has one they want to start with, please feel free to, Emma is ready. Okay, Emma, go ahead.
Awesome, thanks. So I may have creeped your profile a little bit on LinkedIn before, and I noticed you had mentioned your Australia experience. And I was just wondering if you could kind of speak a little more to your experience there and your job opportunity, and if it was like a exchange program to the university or just something you found on your own, because I myself am really interested to kind of explore Australia. But yeah.
Great idea. Australia is amazing. The idea to go to Australia actually came out of me being on co-op in Banff. And so I think it was my third co-op in Banff. I worked for Parks Canada in visitor experience. And if you've ever been to Banff, there are probably more Australians there than Canadians. They love Banff, and we do not know why, but that's where they are. And so I'd met a lot of friends that were Australian. So naturally I was like, they came to my country, I will go to theirs. And so I decided, in what was going to be my double co-op spot, being the 8-month stint, that I would go down to Australia. I did not have a plan. I just went and told my parents I'm moving to Australia with however much money in my bank account. And you know what? I guess they had to be supportive, because this is what they made me to be. And so I ended up finding a job actually in the tourism industry. So I did a few different jobs, but the one that I did for the majority of the time was I worked in Sydney, in Darling Harbour. So one of the most touristy areas of Sydney, Australia, is Darling Harbour. There's the main kind of one that everyone knows called Circular Quay, and that's where the Harbour Bridge is and the Opera House, but just behind that is Darling Harbour. And there is located one of Merlin Entertainment's, which Merlin Entertainment is one of the largest entertainment and tourism providers worldwide. It's based out of the UK, but they have businesses all over the place. And so that was kind of their main hub in Sydney. And so what I did was, whether it be domestic or international travelers would come to this office, and they would book a bunch of different packages and experiences. So they could go to the Sydney Eye, which is kind of like Sydney's version of CN Tower. They could go to a local zoo. They could do, the aquarium that was located on Darling Harbour, and it was sort of, packaging people's experiences together. And so it was a really interesting experience. Obviously I'd worked in Banff already, and Banff's probably one of the, if not the most touristy place in Canada. And so I'd gotten a great experience there to kind of deal with that. But Sydney in Darling Harbour, wow, like it was busy. And I got like a first look at, that side of the tourism industry, like being in, entertainment and attractions is really what it was. So Australia is an amazing place. I have had many friends that were able to do exchanges there, and they spoke highly of that. But Australia is one of the most working holiday makers friendly country in the world. And so if you're looking to go somewhere abroad and have a work experience, I encourage it. You can go there with little plans, but you can also apply online. So that's what I did with Merlin Entertainment, as I was able to apply in advance. and was able to do that in advance of me moving to Sydney. And yeah, it's a great experience. Again, probably one of the more tourism dense places to go if you want tourism experience, but I've had many friends go and do different things, and national parks are huge there as well, conservation, that sort of thing. And so lots of opportunity depending on what you're looking for.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jessica.
Of course.
That's great. I'm just like waiting to see if anyone raises their hand next. I knew it would come.
Yeah.
Go ahead, and then Cassie, you can go next.
I heard you mention Disney. Did you ever do the Disney exchange program through your undergrad, or?
I am sad to say I did not. My younger brother did. So my younger brother also went through the Tourism and Parks Management program, and he did it. So I've heard all about it. And again, if it's still a thing, I encourage it. He spoke so highly of it. Again, the one thing I have to say about Disney, I have someone on my staff that she is Disney trained. Probably fewer places on the planet that train you as well as Disney in terms of customer service delivery. I mean that my younger brother just was like, I feel like I've been trained in such a way now, and he works, customer facing now, and feels like that really set him up for success. But he also met people from all over the world. And so that was really a positive experience. So if they still have the program, apply. It sounds incredible. I'm sad that I never made it work somehow.
Okay, thanks.
Cassie, you can go ahead with your question.
Thanks. Jessica, what at Waterloo was maybe the most helpful with where you're at today and has helped you with your job position today?
I think I would say there's a few different things. So the first would be, and this is going to sound so cheesy, volunteer. I promise you, this made the largest impact for me. So, obviously the courses were incredible, and I'll speak to that in a moment, but the volunteering opportunities kind of brought everything to life. And so I was able to take the practices that I learned in courses and be able to apply them. I was able to speak about my experiences, but it also helped me build those transferable skills. And so I would often volunteer for open houses, and that meant I was public speaking in front of, groups of people quite frequently. And now that's not something that I even hesitate in at work. And so I think that would have helped me in my growth in my position, was I was prepared to, host sales meetings and things like that in my position I'm in today. And so that was such a big help. The other thing is I did a practicum. Again, I'm not sure if that's still something that's available to students today, but that was so helpful. Was able to just dedicate like a full course load really to just doing, hands-on work. And that really helped me in kind of gaining the experience I needed to get that CFL role. And never underestimate that one job will lead to another job that will lead to another job. And so the experience I got from the practicum led the experience I needed for CFL, which afforded me the job at City of Cambridge because I'd done budgeting and critical paths. And then that led me to have such experience that was transferable for Kensington. And so definitely volunteer, do things that are hands-on. It sounds like many of you are in the co-op program, which was super beneficial for me. Working in Banff National Park just solidified that tourism was where I really wanted to be. I did co-ops in recreation to begin with. So I worked at an athletic center in Barrie and as a supervisor, and I was like, that's not for me, and I learned that. And I worked in hotel, I worked in, visitor experience, and then I worked in Sydney as well. And so it's those things that I really took away with me. That being said, take courses that you think are going to benefit you in your career. I steered away from courses because I thought to myself, that sounds a little bit difficult. I think specifically of one, I think it was something about finance in recreation and sport, or finance in tourism, or something of the sort. And I just thought to myself, I don't really think that's my cup of tea. And thinking back now, that would have been very beneficial in my working life. And so try to take courses that you do feel will be transferable. I know there's, the bird course thought, and don't do that. Do what you feel passionate about, what you have interest in, and what you feel will be transferable. Event management was one of the most helpful courses I've ever done because I had to see through event planning from beginning to end. And then I kind of had those skills already for when I did my practicum and then when I went to the CFL. And so certainly my recommendation would be that. And finally, connect, which you folks are very proactive already of doing, is coming to events like this, connect with one another, connect with teachers, connect with, alumni like this, because you never know where those connections will lead you later in life. And so that would certainly be a recommendation as well.
Just because you talked about your practicum, I'm curious to know what you did for that, but I don't want to.
Yes, I work with
I see all the
athletics.
questions waiting.
I work with athletics. So that was, I believe, Crystal may have been the co-op student. I don't know. Maybe it was, yes, she was. There you go. Crystal and I have a long history. So I helped like organize any sort of events for Think Pink and those sorts of things. And so again, I knew critical paths inside and out. And then by the time I got to CFL, when they had their critical path for the Grey Cup, I was like, okay, I got this.
Great. Cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Kellen, I think we're over to you.
Hi, kind of funny you mentioned you worked for Banff National Park with Parks Canada. I've also worked for Parks Canada for the past 5 years.
Nice.
That's actually why I'm out here in Vancouver Island. And luckily with online classes, I've been able to like keep working into the fall. But you also said you took the like parks management minor. And I was just wondering if you could talk about like the relationship between tourism development and that, and then if you had any other experience with work where you felt that that parks minor like really came in.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you. Parks Canada has a part of my heart that I don't know if it will ever let go. I said to my fiance, I was like, if Parks Canada approached me, any day and said, you can come back to Banff and do this sort of work again, it would be hard to pass up. It was competing. I never thought that I went into that program because of tourism, and then I learned more about parks, and then I was able to do that position with Parks Canada in Banff, and I was like, this is incredible. They do go hand in hand, as you can see. So, I mean, my position with Parks Canada was in visitor experience, and so it was very different. A lot of the programs were really interesting. We were able to put together programs about learn to camp for new Canadians, learn to fish for new Canadians, and things like that. And it was more so about even educating on conservation and just proper, park visitation. And so even though we were promoting park visitation, we also wanted to make sure that people were doing that in a sustainable way. And so I think, again, we want to make sure that's something that Kensington's actually coming out with, is a branch of sustainable travel. Tourism is such a massive business. But, if we continue the way we are now, then that's not going to be sustainable in many more years. And so I'm glad that Parks Canada already holds that very true to their values, is they want people to come out and visit their parks, but at the same time, there's a way to do so responsibly. And so I think that's such a big part of the parks program is, making sure you learn those things, making sure you're learning about why they put certain things in place, and why that's protection for, the natural landscape, the animals and such. So I encourage you to keep those connections with Parks Canada. Can I ask you where you're located on Vancouver Island?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm living in a town called Ucluelet.
Oh my gosh, amazing.
Yeah, right next to
Yes.
Tofino. So I work for Pacific Rim National Park Reserve. We are the top third visited national park in Canada. So if you're ever interested in cold surfing, it happens here even through the winter. It's really awesome. But yeah, I've worked in BC, Manitoba, and Nova Scotia. So my career plan is to work for Parks Canada, and I'm also in the visitor service field.
Amazing.
So I want to be, the goal is to be visitor experience manager and work my way up to superintendent of a national park.
Good for you. That's amazing.
Hopefully. So yeah, I got into tourism through work and then found the Waterloo program, and then started reading online about the environmental studies program and found the parks minor. And it's kind of interesting, whenever I talk to my supervisors at work, they've never heard of this program before, and they've never heard of a parks minor, especially like in the visitor service field. And And so it's just like really interesting to be an advocate so much for the conservation and protection while working with the visitors. So it's good to know that, yeah, if you work for parks and you recommend it, then absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. That's so great. And UCLA is beautiful. So
it's beautiful. Yeah. I just actually moved into a new apartment and I'm living right out on the harbor, and it's quite stormy and windy today, but it's a beautiful place if you've never been.
Amazing. Awesome.
So I guess Jessica's gonna plan us a trip where we all get to go visit Kellen.
Yes, exactly. Let's do it.
Yes.
I think your program must need a field trip, and I should get to come, I think. Crystal, you too, because we need to cover it on social. Okay. Afra has a question.
Yes. You mentioned that you work for Merlin Entertainments. Could you elaborate a little bit more with like your experience working with the company, and like did you ever have the opportunity to travel to other places? Because I know Merlin Entertainments is everywhere, all over the world.
Yeah. So you know what? I will say my time with Merlin, because I was only in Australia for just under a year, was brief, but I did speak to many of my managers when I was working there. Many of them have been moved worldwide. And so many of them had come from London, where they were working at some of the main attractions there, you know, moving around, you know, there was some in Paris and things like that. And so like many, and I think about for us, many of, you know, the large hotel chains that we work with, like such as Marriott, have the same sort of programs where once you are in, you have the ability to, you know, travel and be able to be moved to different locations should that be something you're interested in. And so I highly recommend the company in that respect. I mean, in addition to just being a really interesting place to work with great training, when you work for, you know, a corporation of that size, that's something they've really have nailed down. And so again, if you have the opportunity to work for them or come across something, I encourage you to do so. And again, if you're open to traveling, then there's certainly those opportunities available to you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Of course.
Okay, Eric.
Thank you. I'm getting a real education here today. I was not very familiar with this field or section of our faculty. So it's really great to hear. And I can see the enthusiasm in all of you folks, especially you, Jessica. And you're right. I would concur with, you know, do as many experiences as you can, because you're not going to find your dream job probably out of the gate. I probably didn't find mine. Well, I was lucky, but, you know, I probably found mine about 10 years in, and, you know, spent the rest of my career in that. But I wanted to ask you about the last 18 months or so of COVID. And I know the travel industry was hammered. How did you guys, what did you guys do, you know, in 2020 when nobody was going anywhere? I mean, cruise lines weren't going, airplanes weren't going. How did your business survive that, and what did you do?
Yeah, it's a great question. We were very lucky to have launched our North America line in January 2020. So it was a good thing, because many people were pivoting from traveling internationally to traveling domestically. And so we were lucky enough to have that set up and ready to go, that by the time people were getting antsy, you know, lockdown was slowly easing and they could travel within their own country. Many of our clients are American, I'll say that first. They wanted to go somewhere. And so we were able to really promote, and I would say the places that really took off were national parks. So if you've ever been to any of the big five in Utah, that was one of the main destinations. People want to go to Zion and Bryce Canyon. And so all of a sudden we were able to curate that. And so it was what I say was one of the most interesting things I've seen change, and this is still true to this day now, was people used to call into Kensington and say, I want to go to Japan, I want to go in this time, and I'm going to go for this dates. People now call in and they say, I want to travel, where can I go? Because people just, if you have the love of travel in you, it's not so much about where you want to go, it's just that you want to go. And so that is what changed. And that's how we were able to really pivot. Alaska, another thing was they wouldn't allow cruise ships from the US so all of those were canceled, but we could still plan land kind of itineraries. And so all of a sudden we had these incredible, luxurious Alaska itineraries full of, remote lodges and, seaplanes and things like that. And we were able to do them. And so everyone that was planning to go on a cruise pivoted and they went for a land journey. The other thing that I said a little bit, I think this was before anyone had really logged on, I was just saying to Jen, was many continents stayed open. And so some just, said it is what it is, and we'll stay open and take our chances. And so 2 of those were really a good portion of Africa and South America. And so we had a lot of clients traveling to East Africa still. The Middle East was very popular. A lot of clients travel. Egypt has been incredibly popular this year. And so it was interesting to see what used to be Kensington's kind of top grossing countries in terms of sales pivot to these countries that, we hadn't ever really seen at the top of the leaderboard, and just see people explore these different places. And so for our own region, we specialize in Asia Pacific, we launched the Maldives, which is a beautiful destination. And so all of a sudden it was open and we just had tons of people wanting to go. They couldn't go to Thailand, no problem. Why don't we pivot, send you to Maldives? And so it's been really exciting for those countries, and speaking with our local teams there and them just seeing this incredible influx of visitation from Kensington, just because our clients are very loyal, I would say. Once we have our loyal clients, they're kind of loyal to the Kensington brand, they're willing to pivot. And so that's one way that we were able to survive. The other way was that huge kudos to our sales staff. They got on the phone with our clients and they said, postpone your trip, don't cancel, postpone. And there's many reasons as to why that was beneficial for the client, because obviously it's beneficial for Kensington, but it's beneficial for the clients because they designed these amazing trips that took hours and hours of planning. And so just to cancel and lose that. The other thing is that we're seeing availability be so tough for future years. And so if you want to take that trip, it's only a matter of time. Why not postpone it? Kensington promised to keep our rates flat, so you don't have to worry about a price increase. And so that was another way, was our team did a fantastic rate. I think they did 80% of our trips were able to be postponed, which was just tremendous. And so again, huge kudos to the sales staff. They were on the phone more than ever before. When we got that, I remember when Donald Trump kind of taped the news and he said, all Americans abroad should come home. And there was that first kind of news release that came out in March. The sales directors at the time did an overnight, where they pulled an overnight at the office in Toronto, and they put together what our booking procedure was going to be, because we knew the second that our offices opened at 9 a.m., there was going to be just like an influx of calls of people looking to cancel and wondering what was going to happen to their trip. And so at 9 a.m. or just before, we had a meeting with our entire company, and we said, this is going to be our stance and this is what we're going to do. And so all the sales team were equipped. The calls came in and they knew what they had to do. So we've gotten through it. We're starting to see the increase and the uptick, which is really, really good. It was certainly hard. Certainly for many of our guides locally in these countries, right? They've had to find other means of work in the meantime. And so we look forward to having our clients visit with them again, because that's what they love to do. So, yeah.
What other parts of the world do you specialize in?
Yeah, so we do, over 100 countries worldwide now. So really anywhere you can think of, Kensington will most likely be willing to customize an itinerary for you there. Specifically for my team, I specialize in Asia Pacific, but I mean, Africa is really kind of our bread and butter. That's what Kensington started with, was African safaris. And then from there, again, anywhere you can imagine. So if you have a customized journey in mind for like the most remote part of Iceland, we can make that happen. Like it's really incredible. You get to talk to different destination experts and just hear how much passion, how much knowledge they have on their respective countries. You really get that same level of service regardless of which region you go to.
So cool. I'm just like, all I'm dreaming about is traveling somewhere, and if I can afford Kensington to plan it for me. Hannah has a question.
I actually have 2 questions. It's a 2-parter.
Okay.
So I was wondering, how did you get involved with the CFL and the Delta hotels? And then the second part was, can you talk more about like your co-op experiences, like when you were in your undergrad?
Yeah, of course. I'll start with the first because it kind of feeds into the second, or sorry, I'll start with the second because it feeds into the first. So my first co-op job was working at Georgian College in Barrie as an athletics supervisor. And so I did a lot of scheduling and programming and things like that for their athletic facility there. It was a great first co-op. I was able to, live locally where I grew up and get that first co-op kind of just experience. That I actually got through Waterloo. The remainder of my jobs, I actually sourced myself. I knew that I wanted to be tourism specific. And so I really went out and tried to seek out what I wanted to do. And so the second co-op I did was a hotel. And so that feeds into the Delta in a moment. I worked for a hotel in Banff called Banff Park Lodge. And I worked in guest services there. And so hotel is a big piece of, the tourism industry, and hospitality is an interesting thing because you get a first look at kind of what is a big aspect of many people's trips is their stay. And so working in that, and again, a very busy destination, Banff sold out pretty much every single weekend. The town, I mean, not just the hotel, like the town would sell out. And so that was a very interesting thing to be a part of. I'd never worked in something like the hotel before. But it was fascinating. And what it did was it really instilled in me a love for not just tourism, but Banff. And I knew that I wanted to come back for my following co-op. And so I was able to find the Parks Canada co-op and worked in visitor experience. And what I did specifically, I did a number of things. I'd mentioned the Learn to Fish program and the Learn to Camp for new Canadians. I organized their Canada Day celebration and things like that. But I also, there is a program that runs right across Canada, which is really unique at the national parks. And it is, I'm not sure if they still do it. It's called the Explorer program. And I'm looking, yes, I was like, she would know. Okay, so it's still happening. So that's awesome. So it's called the Explorer program. And essentially kids can come to the park, they get a booklet, and they're able to do activities through the park, which allow them to experience the things we want them to experience in the park, for them to learn about conservation and learn about the different things about, the natural surroundings. And so once they do that booklet and they're able to explore the park in that way, they can come to like a Parks Canada kiosk or a visitor center, and they take a pledge as an explorer, and they get a dog tag on a necklace, and they all say the different national parks. And so in this case, Kellen, if she was doing it in Euclid, she would be able to give the Pacific Rim one, and I was able to give the Banff National Park. And so these are done all throughout. And so I oversaw that program for Banff, which was really fun. It was great to be able to, I'd worked in camps all throughout high school. And so I was used to working with kids in that capacity, but it's kind of neat. I was able to like tie in a few different aspects. And then, so that was the parks and a little bit of the visitor experience. And then of course I did Merlin Entertainment in Sydney, which is kind of the last job before graduation. So when it came to the Delta, when Delta was posting to have, assistance with, opening that hotel and get everything set up, I had the experience from the hotel previous. And so that worked out very well, that I was able to use that in that application. And then for the CFL, CFL always takes on a number of, it's like a co-op / internship sort of program. And so I was able to apply for that towards kind of my final term in university. And I put my application in for the event management role. And again, very interesting. If you have any interest in sports events or whatever, it was fascinating. I just learned very quickly that sports for me is an interest and not necessarily a career journey, but I learned so much. So I would still encourage that to anyone that if they're interested.
Thank you.
Of course.
Awesome. Jessica, you mentioned that you found some of these co-ops on your own, and I'm wondering if you wanted to share any tips you have for students in case they're thinking about finding their own, but maybe not sure how that is or what that process is like.
Yeah, absolutely. So Parks Canada specifically has kind of a young student experience. So you would apply through that program. You have to be going into school again come the fall. And so that's kind of a summer experience that I would encourage you to do. But Parks Canada is typically hiring year round. And so if you need to find something, you probably can. That being said, if you are willing to leave where you are and go somewhere, Banff, Whistler, all of these ski towns, summer or fall, winter, they are always looking for people. And so I encourage you, if you're open to going that way, that there will be job opportunities available to you, whether it be hotel or whether it be, you know, experience programming and things like that. They're always looking for people. Especially with COVID right now, a lot of international workers can't come into Canada. And so there's actually a shortage of workers in these places. And so I think there would be even more opportunities now than there would be typically. So that's how I went on for Banff. I would just literally go onto your job search engine, type in, you know, Banff, and then depending on what you want to do, it could be, you know, travel, tourism, hotel, whatever you want to do. And I'm sure that you would be able to find something that way. So those were those two. And then similar type of experience, I'm a big proponent of, when you are looking on these job search engines, keep your search parameters wide, because I tried initially to be like recreation programmer, and it was like very specific and very small. And I felt like I was missing out on a lot of things. And so I started literally just putting in buzzwords. I was like travel, tourism, recreation. And that's how I came across Kensington. I wouldn't have seen that otherwise, I don't think. And so the same is true of, you know, Merlin Entertainment in Sydney as well, just looking, you know, tourism in Sydney. And then this opportunity came up. So that's how I found those.
Cool. Thank you. Crystal has a question.
Hi, Jess. I know that in the past you've had to travel for work. So I'm curious, what is the most remarkable place you've ever traveled to, like in terms of like doing your research for the things that you were selling? And what does traveling for work look like when you do that with Kensington?
Oh, yes. Cool. Yes, one of the best parts of the job, something that is very common in travel, in tourism, if you work in travel sales or anything like that, is familiarization trips, or FAM trips for short. And so something that's a part of the Kensington model is that we like to send our sales staff, ideally once per year, to a destination where they sell. And so with Kensington, I've been lucky enough to go to New Zealand, I went to China, and I went to India and Nepal most recently. It's a hard question to answer which one was most amazing, because they're all incredible. I'll say maybe my favorite bit about each. So when I was in New Zealand, when I started at Kensington, I had a really hard time selling luxury, because I came from, you know, I'd worked in hotels and whatever else, but I hadn't necessarily traveled to the level that our clients were traveling at. I'd just come off a backpacking journey. And so I wasn't mentally prepared to be quoting some of the properties that we quote. And so I was able to go on this trip, and I stayed at this luxury lodge in Queenstown in New Zealand called Matakauri. I encourage you to look it up. And it is where Will and Kate of the royal family stayed on their kind of world journey. And so I was able to all of a sudden be like, oh, like these are the kinds of things I can explain to people. When I was at this lodge, on top of it being absolutely beautiful, you know, like just lakefront views, like the water was always ice somehow beside my bed, like the slippers were always warmed. I'm like, what's going on? And I don't think the staff was able to say no. I was like, I think I'm going to try to trick them. Like they never said no to anything. You could ask for anything and they'd make it happen. And so it was those sorts of things that I was able to start speaking about, on top of obviously, you know, New Zealand and how beautiful it was. It was those sorts of things that were luxurious that I could speak to. China, what a fascinating country, a little bit difficult to speak to now. Obviously, that's something, again, our salespeople have to navigate through. There's a lot of things that come up in the news, and there's political tensions, and those are things that come up in sales discussions as well. But China is such a beautiful country. It is one of the most fascinating countries in terms of history that I've been to. Walking on the Great Wall is like one of the coolest things I've ever done. And we were there early enough. And again, this is like the benefit of private guiding that I was able to speak to. They brought us there early enough that we were like pretty much the only ones up there. And so I think there was like 10 other people when we were taking pictures. And so it wasn't like I saw on Google where you saw tons and tons of people. It was just myself. And so that was really, really special. And so again, speaking to those experiences. And finally, India and Nepal. In Nepal, which is such a beautiful country, we went on safari. Who knew you could go on safari in Nepal? They have the largest population of Asian rhinos in a national park called Chitwan. And so we were able to stay at this safari camp. And again, it had its own plunge pool. Like it's really amazing stuff. And so we went on safari, just my fiance and I and the guide, and he was like this rhino expert. He was like we couldn't hear anything, and he's like, shh. And he's like, come this way. And he went down this like path, and all of a sudden there's a river and there's a rhino there. And so it was just like, those are the kinds of experiences that I use to be able to speak to my clients to say, hey, like, you got to do this. If you're going to Kathmandu, take, 3 extra days, fly, 20 minutes to this little place called Chitwan, stay in this luxurious camp that was overseen by someone who had run South African safari camps, right? So they know what they're talking about. And so those are some of my favorites. But again, I said at the beginning of the call, we are sending out 4 of my staff members to India in January. So that'll be the first fam trip for a long time in our region. They're going to the Golden Triangle in India, which is like Delhi, Agra, where the Taj Mahal is, Jaipur, and then they're going to Rajasthan. So they're going to Udaipur, and it's just going to be amazing for them. And so we just had someone return. He was going kind of on his own trip from Thailand, and he was in this really famous bay. And he was like, this bay usually sees like 10,000 visitors a day, and he was like alone. And so that's the thing, if people are willing to travel right now, it's a fascinating thing to be able to visit these places when these sites are near empty. Yeah.
Wow. I don't know. I'm like, my list is just slowly getting longer and longer. I'm like, okay, how do I afford all these trips? But you just make it happen, or you get a job like Jessica.
I work at Kensington.
Yeah. Actually, what I wanted to ask you is if Kensington has ever hired interns or co-op students.
Yes, so interns certainly. Co-op is something that we have done as well. It hasn't been for a long time, and that's why I kind of hesitated there. But that is something that I could always take away and see if that's something that we're reintroducing kind of post-COVID. But even apart from that, the one thing I would say, and I think this was even a question that was submitted, was about travel sales and how did I know that travel sales specifically was what I wanted to go into. It wasn't. And so if you hear about something like Kensington and that sounds interesting to you, but you think I don't have sales experience or whatever it might be, it's not necessary. What's really important is destination passion and just interest in destination. And so an ability to talk about that. And so yes, certainly intern co-op, that's something we could look at, but even post-grad, I would encourage any of you, feel free to reach out to me if you have questions. But again, it was so much more less about my sales experience, which I did not have, and more so about the fact that I had transferable skills like I've talked about before. I felt like I could talk to clients. I'd done a bunch of that in my co-op roles. I felt comfortable speaking in front of people. And then I had been to these destinations. I'd lived in Australia, just come off of Southeast Asia. And so I was able, it didn't feel like I was selling anything. I was just able to speak about my experiences. It's all warm leads. And what that means is you're not having to cold call anyone. These leads come into Kensington. And so these people are already interested. And so it's really just engaging people who are interested in going somewhere that you know a lot about. And then the rest kind of goes from there. You get to talk to people about the place that you love. And usually that's enough to kind of get them sold on confirming a trip. So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I just put Jessica's LinkedIn in the chat for anyone who didn't have it already, but sounds like some of you already have looked her up. So good work on that. Let's do a quick favor for Sophia and take a quick picture because it is 4:59. But then if anyone has one last really awesome question they want to ask, we can do that after we take a quick photo. So Sophia, if you want to count us down so we're all ready and we smile and
Yes. Okay, so last time I tried to do it from 3, but I had this like yellow box around me and I do not want that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go 5. I'm going to count down from 5, but I'm not going to say 2 or 1 out loud. So do it in your head and smile. I believe in everyone here. So just in about 5 seconds, I'm going to take the pictures, but I'll count down from 5. Get all set up here. Okay, 5, 4, 3. I still have the yellow thing, but you know what? Thank you, everyone. You look amazing, and it'll be fine. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Oh yeah, the trick of trying to make the yellow box go away. I don't know. Okay, does anyone have one last question that they want to ask Jessica before we sign off? Everyone got all their great questions out. Jessica, is there any final note you want to leave us on?
No, just the one thing I can say is you probably are not going to know definitely what you want to do post-grad. I was lost, I promise you that. And so try things. If you have interest, try things. And like I said, it will likely lead to something else. You'll figure out what you like. And again, keep those search parameters wide because there are so many jobs out there, not just in the tourism industry, but in general. And you'd be surprised when you start reading through these job descriptions, what might speak to you. And so, yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you. And I will add my tip for the day as well is to use our alumni network. For those of you who haven't thought of going down that avenue yet, or maybe you're unsure about reaching out to alumni, use our 10,000 Coffees platform. That's how you had to sign up for today. And it's our sneaky way of getting you in there so you can know that it exists. In there, there's a members list. You have access to all of those alumni. They've already volunteered by signing up to say, I want to be a reference and a mentor and a network for our students. So search that member list, search for the company you're interested in, just use the job type you're in.
I think there's something like
tourism and see
600
who pops
people
up
on the list in the members now and in our faculty on 10,000 Coffees.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You get a connection once a month based on your shared interests, whether you're looking for mentorship or specific aspect of a career, whatever else. So I've got another one scheduled actually for Monday. So it's been very good. I've been meeting a lot of people. It's, you utilize the folks that have gone before you for sure.
And I think alumni are always open to that conversation. Don't be afraid of the cold LinkedIn message or the cold 10,000 Coffees message because you know, we want to be a resource to the students and help you. And if you need help getting that co-op job, or you just want to know if they'd be willing to hire someone so that you can arrange your own co-op job, I encourage you to do those things. And also I'm here as a resource for you as well. So if you can't find someone or you're looking for someone, feel free to reach out to me as well. And I can help you find those people within our alumni network as well. And sometimes I have connections to them and can introduce you as well. So yeah, use that network. And
it's already warm, right?
Yeah.
It's already a warm network. You don't have to worry about being rejected if you reach out to people in the 10,000 Coffees. They've signed up there for a reason.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's exactly right. So I'll just take a moment to thank Jessica so much for being here. This was such a great conversation, great questions, such great engagement. Thank you all for turning your cameras on and being here for this chat tonight. It makes me really happy when everybody wants to like fully participate. So we showed up all Jessica's staff and now she's about it tomorrow, I'm sure.
Absolutely, I will.
But thank you. And if you have ideas on who you want to hear from in the winter term, I am working over the next several weeks to line everybody up for January, February, and March. So feel free to put those ideas in the chat. Watch social. We're going to be doing a promotion asking you to submit your ideas then or on there as well. And, you know, I will do my best to get the people you want to hear from. So if you tell me, I will try to deliver for you. So stay tuned for what's coming in the winter and everybody have a great night.
Jen, can you stay on just for a second? I have a question for you.